Now, an Eyewitness News exclusive one-on-one with the bishop. Thomas Tobin has led the Diocese of Providence for the past 12 years. This December, he'll celebrate his 25th anniversary as a bishop.
In a rare sit-down interview at his home in East Providence, Bishop Tobin opens up to me about his joys and challenges and what lies ahead, including his opinion of Pope Francis.
I promise to work hard for you and to do the very best I can.
He's celebrating his silver anniversary as bishop, the past 12 years in Providence. Now 69, Bishop Thomas Tobin was only 14 and in the 8th grade when he decided to study to become a priest. He says his former parish priests were a big influence in his vocation, and despite a young age, his parents were very supportive.
14-year-old kid in the seminary, the years go by. Did you ever think, I don't know, maybe this wasn't for me?
I don't think in my own personal journey I ever reached that point. It is true when you go into the seminary, whether you're 14 or 18 or 22, every day you wake up, you have to say, yeah, I'm going to continue this.
Bishop Tobin tells me his mission of helping the less fortunate is rewarding.
Yeah, the Keep the Heat On program has been phenomenally successful, and Emmanuel House is terribly important. And the little help we've given recently with the bus tickets, the RIP ticket, to help people get to food pantries and soup kitchens.
Over the years, Bishop Tobin has not shied away from controversial topics like abortion, same-sex marriage, and politicians that he says defy the teachings of the church.
I usually don't look for these things, but they usually come my way. And again, I think it's part of the teaching ministry of the church, part of the teaching ministry of the bishop in particular. It's the prophetic role of the church is to take the gospel of Christ and to apply it to real-world situations, especially those that have moral significance to them. So yeah, I will continue that. Some people agree, some people disagree, but I think it's part of the church.
Pope Francis, what do you think of him?
Pope Francis is intriguing. There are many things about Pope Francis I love. He certainly has challenged us in a very prophetic way. He gives all of us something to think about and talk about and pray about. He speaks in very clear and direct and unmistakable language. He uses language that most people can understand.
Okay, what's frustrating about him?
His teaching style can be somewhat ambiguous. That whole question about communion for divorced, remarried Catholics. Different theologians have interpreted that in different ways.
He's faced challenges, including a dwindling number of churchgoers, school and church closings, and just as disappointing, when a man begins to question his faith and decides to leave the priesthood.
Yeah, especially if it's someone I've ordained and went through that whole process with him, and somebody walks away. It's really hard.
What do you want your legacy to be then?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't started thinking too much about legacies. That's something that probably other people speak about better. I hope that people will say, he worked hard. He did his best for the church. That old Bishop Tobin, love him or hate him, like him or not, he worked hard. He did his best, and he tried to keep the church strong, even sometimes when it was challenging and difficult.
Now, Bishop Tobin has some difficult decisions ahead. Coming up new at 6, the bishop talks about the dramatic number of priests facing retirement age and what needs to be done.
New details now in an Eyewitness News exclusive one-on-one with the bishop. Live at 5, Bishop Thomas Tobin reflected on his upcoming 25th anniversary in December and his 12th as the Bishop of Providence.
And new at 6, in a rare sit-down interview at the bishop's East Providence home, he tells me about the growing number of priests retiring and the possibility of more church closings.
But the main thing is
Thomas Tobin reflects on his upcoming 25 years as bishop, including the last 12 in Rhode Island. The bishop tells me he likes the administration side of the job.
Because I keep reminding myself that the root of the word administration is ministry. If I'm a good administrator, I'm helping other people do their ministry.
Over the past 12 years, Bishop Tobin has faced many challenges. 16 Catholic schools have closed, plus 13 churches have either closed or stopped offering masses. 44 parishes are administered by only 22 priests. On July 1st, 10 of those priests will be 70 and over, 3 over the age of 80. And by July of next year, 19 will be past the non-mandatory retirement age.
We've lost 58 priests from active ministry. At the same time, I've ordained only 18. So that's a net loss of 40 in just 8 years. It's averaging 5 a year. So that will continue.
Last year, Bishop Tobin told me the diocese probably has more churches than it needs. He stands by that statement today.
But one of the interesting things, Mike, is that most of the parishes we've closed, they've not closed because of lack of priests. They've closed because of the changing nature of the parishes and the churches.
In the past year alone, Our Lady of Mount Carmel on Federal Hill, St. William's in Warwick, St. Maria Goretti, and St. Edward's in Pawtucket have either closed or stopped offering masses. St. Casimir in Providence announced its intention to close earlier this month.
In almost every case where a church has closed, it's because, two things have happened. The people have disappeared, and the building is in terrible condition.
The bishop says it's very possible more will close or merge next year. He tells me the diocese is studying the viability of parishes in Warwick, Pawtucket, Providence, West Warwick, and Woonsocket. Starting on July 1st, the pastor of Our Lady Queen of Martyrs will be the administrator of Sacred Heart and Holy Family parishes.
There's one priest taking care of 3 churches. That can't go on forever. But again, it's not so much we don't have a priest, it's because the communities are very small.
Despite the challenges, Bishop Tobin believes he's here to stay.
Mandatory retirement is 75. Do you see yourself retiring here, or is there strong possibility you would be reassigned?
As you say, I'm 69 going on 70. It would be very, very unusual to send a bishop at that age to another diocese, start all over. So I fully expect to retire here.
Now, Bishop Tobin says he's also looking forward to the 150th anniversary of the Diocese of Providence and is already starting to think about how to recognize the milestone.